The Brewers and Yankees both clinched a postseason spot on Wednesday. We'll break down that and all of the action on this episode of First Pitch. Yes, welcome on into First Pitch for Thursday, September 19th. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Christian Rauh. You can follow him on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H. And Christian, we saw two teams punch their postseason tickets on Wednesday. The Milwaukee Brewers clinched while they weren't even at the ballpark, with the Chicago Cubs dropping their home game to the Oakland A's 5-3. The Brewers then went on to play last night, take down the Phillies 2-1. The New York Yankees clinched with their victory over the Seattle Mariners. Let's get to the Brewers first, because I don't know if anybody had the Brewers being the first team chronologically in the postseason on their bingo card. If you look at how this offseason and even this season went for them, they trade away Corbin Burnes. They lose their manager in Craig Counsell. They lose Brandon Woodruff to an injury. Devin Williams starts off on the IL. When Devin Williams comes back, they lose Christian Yelich to the IL. They have 17 different starting pitchers in the 2024 season, and yet they're the first team to make the postseason. Have we just been underrating the Milwaukee Brewers all year?
I think we just didn't give them a chance because of all the storylines all season long about, what are they going to do without Corbin Burnes and Woodruff? And then you add in the expectations of missing out on Yelich, as you mentioned. And then you just didn't know what you're going to get out of this young core. I think we severely underrated that trade of Corbin Burnes with Joey Ortiz and DL Hall brought over to the club. And then, of course, with Jackson Chourio is that, especially in the second half of the season, he has slowly became into a consideration to be an NL Rookie of the Year. Now, he won't win it because of everybody else who's playing amazing with Jackson Merrill and Paul Skeens. But in any other year, he would be right up in competition for NL Rookie of the Year. I think that I guess in a nutshell, we did underrate them, but I think we had a fair reason to do so, Lindsay. Everything was against them heading into the season. Not many people thought that they were going to remotely even make the playoffs, let alone be the first team to clinch. And my favorite thing, by the way, last night, and I'm sure you got one too, but Pat Murphy, when they cheered on, they were sitting there celebrating for the Brewers winning the postseason or clinching the postseason. He has Bob Uecker around his arm. And what he says, there's no one who epitomizes being a champion like this man. And what does Bob Uecker say in good old fashion? Instead of just giving like a good speech, the first thing he says was, "I peed my pants." Like, come on, are you kidding me? Bob Uecker is just a legend. I love it. But yeah, I think we just underrated the Milwaukee Brewers, and that's on us.
Yeah, they walk off the Philadelphia Phillies last night. They played a competitive game. They had a competitive lineup, played a competitive game. They win 2-1 over the Philadelphia Phillies last night. Rhys Hoskins continues to torment Philadelphia. He goes 2 for 3 with a double and a homer off of Aaron Nola, his old teammate. And in the postgame celebration, they bring Uecker down from the radio booth. They have, for 20-year-old Jackson Chourio, they have a stroller full of non-alcoholic beers so that he can participate in the celebration. And it's a good story, and you want to see it continue. The flip side of this, the other team that clinched the end of the night, and we're going to get back to the Brewers in a second when we compare these two teams, the New York Yankees. They win 2-1 in 10 innings. There's a really interesting double play that happens late in the game where Julio Rodriguez is on third. Randy Arozarena is up to bat. I think it's a 2-2 count. Randy swings and misses at a pitch and loses control of the bat. It shoots down the left field line. And so Julio jumps out of the way towards the dugout to get out of the way of the bat, but goes too far when the ball is still live. So Austin Wells jogs a little bit down the third base line and then throws to Jazz Chisholm covering the bag, and they tag Julio Rodriguez out. Never seen that before. Justin Turner then turns around. I think he strikes out to end the inning. But 2-1 victory there. And now the Yankees have officially clinched their postseason spot as well. They're obviously still not. The East is still not decided, right? They now have a 5-game lead over Baltimore with 10 to play. So you think they're probably going to hold out, but they haven't officially won it just yet. Which of these two teams do you think is better prepared for a postseason run? The Brewers or the Yankees?
Well, I will say this: the Yankees and the Mariners, that series, that park, T-Mobile Park, is really showing its park factor. In that game, 29 strikeouts last night between the two teams, 15 for the
Gross.
Yankees, 14 for the Mariners. We always talk about how the Mariners strike out a lot. It might not be just how the team is rostered. It might have a lot to do with that park, because we're seeing it with the Yankees as well. But when you ask that question, what team is more ready for the postseason? You have some championship pedigree players on the Yankee squad, like Garrett Cole, who's been there before, Aaron Judge, who's been in the postseason and had big, has made big things. Rizzo, Stanton. You have guys of that nature to be there. So it seems like that's the easy answer. However, as of late, the Brewers look really good. And even with their lack of playoff pedigree, if you will, Lindsay, I think I'm going to lean towards the Brewers, thinking that team is right now. If I had to pick, like, let's say the Yankees and Brewers were the World Series pick and they played tomorrow, I'd take the Brewers to win in 6.
Ooh, that's bold. See, for me, it comes back to, like, you look at, can you find 3 hot hitters? Can you find 3 hot relievers? Can you find 3 hot starters? Like, that's the old John Smoltz thing that he told me back in January. And it's like, offensively, oh yeah, Willy Adames, William Contreras. It could be Jackson Churio. It could be Reese Hoskins could get hot in a series. Like, you can find 3 hot hitters. You look at like 3 hot relievers. It's okay, great. You've got Trevor Megill. You've got Joel Payamps, Jared Koenig. Like, you've got guys who could get hot. But I struggle with these starters, right? I mean, your 4 main starters have been Freddie Peralta, Colin Ray, Tobias Myers, and Aaron Savali. And none of those names really instill fear in you. I guess Freddie Peralta deserves more respect than he's getting. 31 starts, 3.69 ERA, but 193 strikeouts and 168 in the third innings. But it's just like, I'm not scared of that rotation. Whereas you look at the Yankees, they have everybody to the point where they had to move somebody to the bullpen. And so it's just, I think the Yankees' weakness is probably the bullpen. I think the Brewers' weakness as of now is probably the rotation. But at the same time, we've been saying that all year, and they've gone and done it. And so I'm probably going to look like an idiot for saying I'm not as scared of the Brewers that I would take the Yankees in that series. I don't quite think we properly understand what makes the Brewers good. And by we, I really mean me in this, because obviously you believe in them. I don't quite think I fully appreciate what makes the Brewers good. And I think that's why they continue to get underrated by a lot of the country.
No, I agree with you. I think, it's still a big question mark. I don't have the answers for that. If I did, I'd probably be working for MLB or something. I would really just I'd have a better job, I'm sure. But regardless, I find it so hard to doubt them once again, because they are the first team to make the postseason. I know the Yankees did it on the same day as well, but we expected the Yankees to do this. We expected them to do it. And I still think there are a little bit of question marks on this team of if they can consistently hold it up, because they've had some slumps, and I'm not saying the Brewers haven't either. But I guess we'll see. Maybe having too much pitching, could that be a bad thing? I know that we always say that that's never going to be a bad thing, and you like to say depth works itself out, right? But having those decisions of putting a guy like Marcus Stroman in the bullpen, like, if it doesn't work out, then could that turn into a bad thing? And then I will say one more final thing before we move on. I think this solidifies Pat Murphy winning Manager of the Year in the National League.
It should. Yeah. Pat Murphy's the Manager of the Year. Hands down. I can't think of anybody else in the National League deserves it more than him. So definitely agree with you there. Going out west, San Diego Padres take down the Houston Astros 4-0 in Petco Park. The story of this one kind of has to be the pitcher's duel. Framber Valdez, 7 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. But Dylan Cease, 8 1/3 scoreless, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, strikes out 5. This, and then you have a situation you had back to back to back. Caleb Ort gives up home runs to Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Donovan Solano, who that's totally the 3 guys you thought were going to hit home runs. Donovan Solano was the 3rd. Yeah, totally the guy you thought was going to get the 3rd home run. But what are the chances that the Padres legitimately can catch the Dodgers in the West? The lead is now down to 3.5 games. The Padres are getting ready to take on the White Sox for a series. Is it possible the Padres can catch the Dodgers still?
Yeah, I mean, maybe other than the New York Mets, the Padres might be the hottest team in baseball right now, and their pitching's on point. Manny Machado is on fire. Jackson Merrill is looking really good, and then you got guys like Dylan Cease doing what he did last night, 8 1/3 innings going scoreless. You take that back to his last start, Lindsay. He is now not allowed a run in the last 14.1 innings pitched. He has almost gone a game and a half of a no-hitter. He's already had a no-hitter earlier in the season. If he would have finished off that no-hitter last night, if he would have finished off that game last night with a complete game shutout, where would that have put him in the Cy Young Award? I don't think he would have passed Chris Sale, but that might have moved him up a rank or two. So that's a really interesting thing what's going on with Dylan Cease here. He's allowed only 6 hits in his last 14 innings, no runs, 15 strikeouts to only 2 walks. That's a pretty incredible last 2 starts, getting hot at the very right time for the Padres. I think they could catch him. I talked about in the last couple weeks of the show that I didn't think that the Dodgers were going to win the NL West. And I did kind of point to the Diamondbacks at first because they were surging, but they seemed to fall off. But this Padres team really shows. I think they made the really good pieces at the deadline, adding to that bullpen. You're starting to see Tatis come back from his injury. He's starting to look really healthy. He had a home run the other night, as I mentioned with Machado. So yeah, I think they can chase him down.
Here's what's wild to me. I don't quite think we give the Padres enough credit for this, and people in the East Coast probably don't realize this. The Padres have 6 lineup regulars batting .279 or better, right? I mean, obviously, we know Luis Ariz, the singles merchant who doesn't strike out, but like Manny Machado's batting .279, and then after that, Fernando Tatis Jr. 282, Jerickson Profar 283, Donovan Solano's batting .286, Jackson Merrill's batting .292. Like they've got so many guys that are just consistently getting on base that it really stresses a pitching staff, really stresses a defense. And so, yeah, it's absolutely dangerous. And I think with the Dodgers too, you have some questions here. They win last night 8-4. Shohei Ohtani steals another base. But you have a situation where Bobby Miller is getting sent back down. You have this Gavin Stone injury thing that's kind of keeping you out right now. He's unlikely to return this year. So now it's Gavin Stone not going to come back. Tyler Glasnow is probably not going to come back. Landon Knack looked good last night. He rebounded from the Braves whacking him, right? He gives you 5 scoreless innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. But the Dodgers don't appear to, for having 3 MVPs in the top 3 of their lineup, they don't appear as formidable as they used to because you have so many pitching questions now. It feels like it's Jack Flaherty, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and then a ton of question marks. And it's just surprising that you can spend, $1.4 billion in free agency, and we're still at this point. After you go and make more moves at the trade deadline, we're still at this point when it comes in late September.
Yeah, and I'm surprised, to be honest with you, because as we mentioned at the beginning of the year, I think I've alluded this a couple times on this show, but there was a graphic that MLB Network put out, I think before opening day, and it showed like 9 or 10 names on the list, and it was like Dodgers projected starting rotation, and there were 9 solid names on that list. Clayton Kershaw still waiting to come back from injury. You had James Paxton still on that list. Obviously Glasnow. All of those right now are either not on the team, not with the team, or on the injured list. So a lot of question marks for this Dodgers rotation of what will happen in the postseason. And I think those are valid questions. this offense is a dangerous offense. We've seen that all year long. I think the only time they've really been stopped, that big three in the last month, is in their series against Atlanta, but they still had a series split. So if the pitching just is somewhat good, is just somewhat good in the postseason, I think they can still make some noise. But if they figure it out, Lindsay, then I think the inevitable will happen, and this Dodgers team will do exactly what we all expect and find a way into the Fall Classic.
Yeah, right now the Dodgers have 7 different starters on the injured list. Listen to this IL rotation. Clayton Kershaw, Tyler Glasnow, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, Gavin Stone, River Ryan, Emmett Sheehan. That's not a bad rotation, and that's just the IL right now for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and that's what's so wild about this. Okay, the Detroit Tigers take down the Kansas City Royals 4-2 last night, at the same time that the Minnesota Twins get walked off by the Cleveland Guardians 5-4. The Tigers are now half a game back in the American League wild card. At this point, who are you saying is going to make the postseason, the Minnesota Twins or the Detroit Tigers?
I'm going with Detroit Tigers. I really like what I've seen from them as of late. Tarek Skubal has been fantastic. Montero's picked up the slack for Jack Flaherty being traded. Going back to Skubal, really his only question mark on the season was, can he pitch at Kauffman? He proved that last night. He had some issues in his entire career at Kauffman Stadium. Last night he went, I think, 6 innings and only allowed 1 run, 5 innings and allowed 1 run, but had 7 strikeouts. So I think he solidified as the AL Cy Young winner. I think that last little piece against the Royals last night, in my mind, solidified it. And then this young core is very exciting. You have Riley Green getting hot. You have uh, you have Meadows doing good. There's just a
They moved
lot
him
of
to lead
really
off from ninth to first. He led off last night.
right. So there's just a lot of things that I like here. And if you look at their schedule, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, they finish with the White Sox.
Yeah, they definitely have a pretty not difficult slate to get in. At the same time, the Minnesota Twins. I mean, this team feels like they are in a little bit of trouble. A lot of the regulars either, or sorry, a lot of the big names aren't really playing every day. Byron Buxton has to get days off. Carlos Correa has to get days off. Correa did his best yesterday, 3 for 5, 4 RBI, just wasn't enough. The Guardians walking it off in the 10th. But this is a situation where it feels like they're not getting a bunch of production from the new additions, whether it's the prospects or the trade acquisitions. Manny Margot, 0 for 4. He's batting 241. Brooks Lee, 0 for 4 after being promoted. He's hitting 217. And just right now, the whole lineup is cold. Carlos Santana goes 0 for 5. Trevor Larnach goes 0 for 4. Jose Miranda, who's batting 289 on the year, he goes 0 for 4. And it's just something where it feels like the whole team is kind of slumping at the moment. Matt Wallner's been hitting so well, they moved him up to second in the lineup, but he can't do it by himself. And, him and Willie Castro, Willie Castro, Correa, and Wallner had all but one of the Twins' 8 hits yesterday in this loss. And so at a certain point, it just feels like they're kind of running out of steam a little bit. They wasted a great start from Bailey Ober, 2 runs in 7 innings. If I have to pick one of these two teams, it feels like, I'm going to end up taking I'm going to take the Tigers. And I hate that for the Twins because they've been in this all year, but it just feels like they're fading down the stretch.
Yeah, I will say one thing, and shout out to our Discord for this, and it was Kyle in the Discord, so he'll probably listen to this in 6 months or so. So shout out to that. However, the Twins hold most of the tiebreakers, and most people do fail to mention that. So something to keep in mind if it does get close, and this is going to be a close series down the stretch for the final wild card spot. Something that I did not think we were going to run into, but it seemed to be that way. The Twins will take that with the tiebreakers. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a very good point there. All right. Let's get the quick pitch real quick. Couple different topics here. The minor leagues has crowned some champions now. So we have the Bowling Green Hot Rods have won the South Atlantic League. That's affiliated with Tampa Bay Rays. That is high A. We have the Fredericksburg Nationals. They have won the Carolina League. The Lake County Captains, Cleveland Guardians, they've won the Midwest League. The Palm Beach Cardinals have won the Florida State League, single A there. And then I think the big one here for the second straight year, the California League has been won by the Modesto Nuts. Minor league championships. Do they matter or not?
I'd like to say yes. I think so, but I'm also a huge minor league fan. If you ask the
True.
general baseball fan, I think they would say no. And I think probably as a majority of fans, they'd probably say no because no one looks at the records and says, well, the Modesto Nuts won 90 games last season. You better watch out for the Mariners in the next 3 years, right? Like no one pays attention to
Right.
that. But I do think it's cool and I do think it's good for communities. And I think that minor league baseball is one of the best family environments you can get in all of baseball. So in a nutshell, probably not, but I'm going to say yes because I'm a true minor league baseball fan. And I do love the fact that Modesto won because it's the final season for the Modesto Nuts.
Yeah, they're in that ballpark. They are moving after this year. I do think it's the thing to me. I don't think in the grand scheme of things, maybe necessarily that the championship is as big as you would think a championship would be. But some teams do take this seriously. Seattle is one of them. Texas is one of them. Washington is one of them. St. Louis is one of them. And you heard some of those names this year where they put groups of prospects together and they move them up together. They want them to play. They're using the minor league system. They're using the playoff push in the minors as a team building, as a chemistry thing. And I think that's the real value of the minor league championship is like Modesto last year. They brought in, like, they had some of their better international prospects. They brought in some of their recent draftees, like Colt Emerson, guys like that. And they all bonded together. I think they won 23 of their last, like, 25 games and won the championship. And I think that's the real value of a minor league championship is giving these kids something to play for and somebody else to play for, right? We're playing for each other. We're playing to win something. These games aren't meaningless. They do mean something. And we get a chance to bond together over winning a championship. And I do think that's the value of a minor league championship. In the grand scheme of things, obviously everything is dictated, success and failure is dictated by what your major league team does. But I do think that does matter. So I kind of with you. The average fan probably doesn't care, but the organizations do from the perspective of what it does for those players that are involved in those postseason races. Talking about postseason races, though, the National League wild card, we saw just about everybody involved win in this. I already mentioned the Padres won. The Arizona Diamondbacks were able to take down the Colorado Rockies 9-4. The New York Mets won 10-0 over the Washington Nationals, and the Atlanta Braves won 7-1 over the Cincinnati Reds. The Braves are still 2 games back in the National League wild card. Is there any chance that the Braves catch either Arizona or New York?
The chance is still there. I think it's going to be really tough for them, especially because they've been so up and down with their offense. But the path is still there. The Mets and the Diamondbacks both have very tough schedules for the rest of the season. Respectfully, the hardest schedule for the Mets and the third hardest for the Diamondbacks in all of baseball. So I do think that there is a reasonable chance. However, 2 games back and only 10 games to go. I mean, it's basically win out or it's done, especially since the Braves and the Mets still play a 3-game series. I think it's very important that the Braves get at least, I don't know, at least a series win over the weekend before they take on the Mets. I think that's very important to finish off that road trip against the Miami Marlins. So you head into that Mets series, maybe only down 1 game and a half, whatever so may be, and you find a way to win that series and sneak in there. So yeah, I think there's a chance, but I'm not holding my breath, Lindsay.
Yeah. The Braves finish up their series against Cincinnati today before heading to Miami for 3. The Mets start a 4-game series against Philly. So Braves fans have to root for Philly. Braves odds are down to 51.4% to make the postseason. And I'm kind of with you. I think they need to be within a game of the Mets when they play each other for that next to last series of the year for Atlanta to have a shot. If they're more than 2 games out when that series comes around, even sweeping that series won't necessarily, get them where they need to be. So I think that's there. And for the New York Mets, if Francisco Lindor's back keeps him, let's assume he's out for the rest of the regular season. Is that the death blow for the Mets, or can they hang on without Francisco Lindor for 2 weeks?
Yeah, if you would have asked me that last week, I'd say, yeah, that's absolutely the death blow. But, Acuna's looked really good in his replacement since he's been back. And I know that's tough for you as a Braves fan to say that
Yeah,
Acuna on the Mets is doing good, but no, he's looked okay. And I think if anything, what's going to hurt the Mets is their schedule, not the missing of
yeah,
Francisco Lindor. So, um,
true.
will it suck not having him? Absolutely. But I don't know if it will be an absolute killer as I thought it might have been a week ago.
Yeah. Talking about the Mets and pitching and things like that. All right, guys, talking about the Mets and segueing into pitching. We got some injury updates and pitcher movement across baseball yesterday. Christian Scott, prospect for the Mets, gonna have Tommy John. He will miss all of 2025. But Kodai Senga, who has pitched a grand total of 6 innings this year, all against Atlanta, I'd like to add, has vowed that he is going to come back. He will work in relief if need be, but he swears he's going to pitch this season. At the same time, Brandon Williamson of the Cincinnati Reds, who left to start against Atlanta the other day after 4 outs, is having Tommy John surgery, while Craig Kimbrell has officially been designated for assignment by the Baltimore Orioles. Which is more impactful down the stretch? Baltimore losing a reliever or the Mets potentially gaining Kodai Senga?
It's got to be Senga. I mean, because the injury or the loss of Kimbrel was self-made. They just made that decision to move on from Kimbrel. They think that they're a better team without him on the roster right now, and they may not be wrong. He's struggled in his last couple appearances. He was great at the beginning of the year, but just fell off, and that's what age does to you. There's a time, there's a time and place that you finally stop playing the game, and I think Kimbrel's time has finally come. But I think Senga is exactly what the Mets need. They've already had a remarkable pitching staff, one that's been very underrated, one that's been very surprising all year long with Manaea, Severino, and David Peterson. You get a guy like Senga to come in and be a reliever for them in a couple innings and maybe put some high leverage situations in the postseason. Give yourself more than 6 innings pitched down the year. Arguably would have been the best pitcher for the Mets this year. Yeah, I think that's huge for the Mets.
Yeah, being able to add him to that back end mix with Diaz and Reed Garrett and guys like that could definitely help. All right, wrapping up real quick, looking at some of these series that are being played today. It's not a full slate, but it's close to a full slate. Lots of day games and getaway days. What stands out to you in this slate of games today?
I think there's a lot of really good series, but the one that I'm going to pay attention to is the series finale between the Giants and the Orioles. And the reason I say that is because the Baltimore Orioles are slumping really bad right now. In that series,
Mhm.
they're being outscored 15-3, Lindsay. They're not looking good. They're struggling with runners in scoring position. And their pitching is letting up a lot of home runs, especially early. Mike Yastrzemski has hit a leadoff home run in not one, but both games this series. So the Orioles need to figure it out. I think they're already out of the American League East, being 5 games down from the Yankees. But if they want to hold on to that number 1 spot in the American League wildcard race, I think they got to figure it out. And that starts today in a day game at 1 o'clock Eastern at Camden Yards.
Logan Webb versus Zach Eflin. One of the best pitchers for the San Francisco versus a guy that Baltimore needs to get right for the postseason. I think I'm going to be watching Philly and New York. It's the first of a 4-game series between them. Taijuan Walker, who was briefly discussed moving to the bullpen, is back as a starter and starts opposite Luis Severino. This feels like it's a lopsided matchup from a pitching perspective towards New York. Obviously, this game matters more to New York than to Philly, but it is not out of the realm of possibility that if New York can sweep this series against Philly, that they could contend for the division, which is not necessarily something I thought we would say. It's more than a 99% chance that Philly wins a division. But I think if a sweep happens here, you at least need to have that conversation. But also, I am kind of curious to see what happens between Arizona and Milwaukee. Does Milwaukee finally roll out one of those post-clinching lineups while Arizona is desperately fighting to maintain a playoff spot? That'll be Brandon Pfaadt versus Will Myers. Both those games start at 7:15 Eastern. This has been First Pitch. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I will say if the Brewers play and they have a postseason lineup tonight, I don't think you'll have to worry about any kind of hangover from Jackson Chourio.
There you go. This has been First Pitch for Thursday, September 19th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor. Leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. And until next time, this has been First Pitch.